Good day. I'm Jacqueline Williams, and I'm excited to be here to share with you about hearing God's voice in the context of what I refer to as life planning. Each year, I prepare a rather detailed document I call my life plan. It's a living document. It describes where I am now and all the areas that matter to me, what areas I want to improve in, and also about what I'd like my life to look like in the future. It includes specific actions necessary to take me from where I am now to where I want to be. The benefits of this document are to help me clarify my priorities, keep my life balanced, and assist with sorting through the various opportunities life offers me. But lest I be accused of plagiarism, I can't take credit for the life plan. The real author of my life plan is the true and living God. It's His will for my life that I truly desire. I bet you do too. What I'd like to do for the next few minutes is share with you, again in the context of the life plan process, how I hear God's voice. We buried my late husband November 1st, 2012. I was blessed to have been surrounded by and supported by lots of family and friends during that time, and as we moved into the holiday season. And for Christmas gifts that year, my well-meaning loved ones gave me lots and lots of advice. They told me I should move. They told me I should get a job, that I should start a new business. They advised as to even when I should take my ring off. And one person, with my best interests of heart, of course, encouraged me to get married again as soon as possible. Because, of course, that's what he did, and it worked out very well for him. But for me, I thought, this is enough. All of this input was just serving to confuse me, and it didn't help me figure out what I needed to do about my life. I knew that what I really needed was to hear from the ultimate source of direction, the one true God. I needed to hear from Him about what to do next week, what to do next month, the rest of the year, and in fact, what I should do for the rest of my life. So let me share with you 5 of the keys that I found helped me to hear the plans He has for my life. If you want to hear from God or be sure it's His voice you're really hearing, try putting these 5 keys into action in your life. I believe they will be a great help to you. The first key is separate. So I figured out that I needed to get away from my circle. I needed to be in a distraction-free zone, a place void of not only my wonderful friends and family, but all of the distractions I subject myself to when I'm home. Like house cleaning, email, social media, shopping, planning what I'm going to have for dinner, and so on, I needed to isolate myself. I needed to connect with God one-on-one. I needed to be able to hear His voice without interference. So I booked a New Year's Eve flight to Jamaica. That's where I hosted and participated in my first annual life planning retreat with God. I went to a place where I had solitude and silence and didn't have those self-inflicted distractions. Jesus modeled this as a way to hear His Father's voice. He was surrounded by multitudes of followers and the disciples that He loved. But when it came time for Him to hear from His daddy, He separated Himself. Each of the Gospels records situations where He got away from disciples and from the crowds. He went to the garden. He went to the wilderness. He went to a solitary place. He went up on the mountainside. He went out on the water. He went to a quiet place, and He went to Gethsemane. When He had important decisions to make, this is what He did. So this is my first point. To hear from God, I encourage you to do as Jesus did and find a way to have one-on-one time with Him. Now, this doesn't mean you have to find a secluded garden or even take a trip to Jamaica, although I highly recommend that. And, in case you didn't know it, this is where Jesus lived. Someone told me, I won't say who, that he lives in Norfolk, but for clarification, he lives in Jamaica. He just vacations in Norfolk. No, what I'm really talking about is stealing away to a place of silence and solitude where you have plenty of time for just the two of you. It might be something as simple as checking into a local hotel room for a day or two. I found this to be an effective approach to connecting with God and gaining perspective on the direction for my life. So take the time, go somewhere you can be alone and not distracted by everyday responsibilities. So I'm alone. Now what? Well, what do you do when you want something? When you want something from someone? We ask, right? Matthew 7 through 11 starts out by telling us to ask and it will be given to you. So likewise, if we want God to reveal his plans for us, we should just ask him. James 1:5 says, if any of us lacks wisdom, we should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. I feel like he's just waiting for me to welcome him into my life planning process. In fact, not just to welcome him, but actually asking him to come in and take control. And so John reminds us in 1 John 5:14 and 15 that we need to trust that when we ask in prayer according to his will, he will answer us. And he will. I'm definitely a witness to that. So ask God directly to reveal his plans for our life. During the retreat, I'm in a mode of prayer the entire time. So I don't mean I'm on my knees or overtly praying, but I'm conscious of being in his presence. I guess my spirit is praying. Just to let you know in a little more detail about my process, unlike the first time, I no longer wait until my retreat starts to begin asking God what his will is or to begin listening for his responses. I start asking and listening months before, usually right after I make my reservations. And that brings me to my next point, listening. I keep a note on my phone where I can jot down what God has given me in advance of my retreat. One of the things I seek him for is what scriptures I'll be focused on, or what books I should read during the life planning retreat. I'm listening for his responses through his word, through godly leaders, and through my circumstances. This year, here's one of the really interesting things that happened. A couple of days before I was ready to go, I was looking over some of my notes and made a shocking discovery. I found a note that said I should fast for the first 24 hours I'm in Jamaica. Well, if any of you have visited Jamaica, you know why this was so shocking. What's the first thing you do when you touch down in Jamaica? And I don't mean look for the rum punch. I start looking for some jerk chicken. I love Jamaican food. Why in the world would I ever consider fasting the first day I was there? That was one reason it was a shocking discovery. The other reason was that I don't remember writing that down. This was not one of my big ideas. I know that was the Holy Spirit that led me to write the note, and he called it to my remembrance at just the right time. So what I'm saying is that by listening, I mean expecting God to speak and to being sensitive to him speaking. It may or may not be in an audible voice, but God is speaking all the time. Sometimes I just receive a direction in my spirit that I know is from him. So as I'm prayerfully working through each stage of the life planning process, I'm open to and I'm looking for him to communicate with me. One of the other ways I hear from him and know it's him is when he's communicating plans for me that are consistent with how he made me. Matthew 25:14-27 gives me direction about that. His plans will often be related to using the gifts he's uniquely blessed me with to serve others. His plan will also be those that work on or will improve my strengths, or eliminate my weaknesses or areas of my life that need improvement. Pay attention. He will flood you with ideas and information. My next point is about being in His Word, studying. So, as I said, I don't always hear from God in an audible voice, which I have experienced, or a prophetic word, or even that feeling of knowing something's from God. Another clear way God speaks to me is through His Word. Our Bible is God's revealed will. His Word reveals His plan. What He gives you will be consistent with His Word and will. But that means you need to open up your Bible and dig into it. Though the Bible might not tell me what job to take or which house to buy, it gives me everything I need to know to make the decision. So my goal is to base my plan on God's will. God isn't going to speak to you about anything that contradicts His Word. In His Word, He's already told us about much of what He wants us to do or how He wants us to do what we do. What we have to do, by His grace, is get our lives in sync with His Word. So I'm always looking for areas where I'm not being obedient to His Word. One of the goals that came out of this year's planning is to memorize a specific number of scriptures each month this year. The way God spoke to me about that is from His Word. He told me in Joshua 1:7 that I should meditate, excuse me, was that Joshua 1:8, that I should meditate on His Word day and night. Well, I recognize that it's kind of tough to meditate on His Word if I don't know what it is or don't have it in my heart. So consistent connection with His Word sensitizes us to God's plan for our lives and what we need to do to get in sync with it. So my last point is about connection. This last point is actually the first point. All of this hearing God's voice stuff is dependent upon us having a relationship with Him. John 10:27-28 tells us that His sheep hear His voice and He knows them. That sounds to me like open communication between the shepherd and sheep. They're in relationship. Here's an example. In a room full of crying kids, how many of you can make out your child's voice? All of you, I'm sure. Why? Because you're in relationship. To have that kind of relationship with God, we must pray, spend time in His Word, and be willing to submit our will to His will. During this year's retreat, that connection became very clear to me. Remember that 24-hour fast I told you about? Well, I did it. And after it was over, it was very clear to me why God told me to do that. For the first 24 hours at that retreat, I was not distracted by pursuing food. I wasn't focused on getting jerk chicken for lunch and deciding which restaurant on the resort I was going to take dinner at. I was able to immediately get to a quiet place, drink water, and commune with God one-on-one. He had my undivided attention. One of the key aspects of relationship with God is obedience. I gave up food for that entire 24 hours. I did what He said. As a result of that obedience, I believe I was able to hear God pour out His direction for my life. That fasting allowed me to focus on Him and only Him. Fasting focuses our hearing like nothing else when seeking help and guidance from God. This year, He poured into me in an overwhelming way, starting on that very first day. My God knew what I needed to do to get this effort started right off the bat, with no time wasted. How many of you have been at dinner with someone and they spent most of the time checking their phone? How apt are you to share important stuff with them during that dinner? What does that say about the relationship? Well, how much more does God want from His children He's in relationship with? In the Message version of John 15:5, we can hear Jesus Christ saying, "I am the vine, you are the branches. When you're joined with me and I with you, the relationship, intimate and organic. The harvest is sure to be abundant. Separated, you can't produce a thing." So essential to having a truly God-designed life plan is for us to stay close to Him like a branch attached to a vine. So this was a peek into how I hear from God as a part of my life planning retreat. This was my 6th year, and it keeps getting better. I don't believe God's plan for us are a secret. I believe that if we separate ourselves, ask Him, if we listen to Him, study His Word, and more than anything else, connect with Him, stay in relationship with Him, He'll share with you in a mind-blowing way. The next time you begin to consider God's plan for your life, I would encourage you to try these 5 keys. You will hear the voice of God more clearly, and your plans will be more consistent with God's will for your life. Trust God in this. Enjoy the abundant life He has planned for you.